just going to turn it over to them. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Michelle Rogers. I'm your account general manager, and I know this was rescheduled a couple of times, so we are very happy to be here. So thank you guys for your time and attention today. Jamil, he is our national literacy specialist, and he's going to do the presentation. We also have Peter Gupta. He is our vice president of sales, and he wants to make sure he comes to support as well. But before Jamil kicks off, because I know we only have an hour for presentation, I want to bring to your attention some things that's in your folder, in your bag, that, for you to be aware of. First of all, inside the insert, there's a green tab, and on that green tab, inside your bag, there's a green tab, and on that tab, you're going to find access to get to Realize. You know, after you leave here, you can go into Realize with those credentials and be able to experience it for yourself, the digital part. Also in your folder, I wanted to point out two particular flyers. One shows how ReadyGen supports the Michigan Literacy Initiatives for grades K through 6. So it highlights how ReadyGen supports Michigan Literacy Initiatives. Another flyer I want to just make sure that you're aware of is ReadyGen has area connections to science and social studies. So those unit themes are included into ReadyGen. So I wanted to point those two things out to you. And then one other thing, this is not in your folder, but I have available for you. I know that you guys are using the IMET rubric. We have aligned how ReadyGen meets those the IMET rubric. So in case you want to just kind of cross-reference to make sure that you have every box checked off in regards to ReadyGen, we have copies for K through 6 if you want to just kind of cross-reference your notes when you check off your rubric. Yeah. So if you want one, just let me know and make sure you get a copy. So without further ado, I want to get into the presentation. Here's Jamil Odom.
All right, good afternoon again, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Our vocal cords are thawed out or just in shock that we actually have the presentation. Is that what it is? We actually really are here. You know, rescheduled once, rescheduled twice. You know, we are really here. Third time's the charm. And maybe it's just because, you know, are we the final?
Yes.
Well, you know, back in the 90s, there was this, you know, this song. You know, that was a very popular wedding song, and, you know, sung by this person named Vanessa Williams. And, you know, when I thought my chance had, I have a mic, might as well go for it, had passed, you went in.
Save the best for us.
There you go. Say, hey, it's psychic, right? Okay, so maybe there's a reason. I'm going to forfeit this because you all heard everything greatly. So I'm just going to drop this because me with a microphone will end up ReadyGen karaoke night, and we'll just go through a whole bunch of songs, right? And then at the end, I'll just say something about the resource and walk out. They'll be like, hey, can we do that? All right, so with ReadyGen, key things to note. We're speaking with Ross. We heard that you all had an initial process where you vetted resources based upon the initial Ed Reports, you know, website. And as you know, with Ed Reports, I compare it to Carfax or a type of consumer reports where it's your peers. Your peers giving a look at under the hood to the resource. And as you noted, ReadyGen had received K through 6 green scores, meaning that it was, you know, a valid, solid resource. But we know as working with literacy, and that is the subject of all subjects in our elementary classrooms, literacy instruction, you want to go a little bit deeper to see really the architecture behind ReadyGen, why ReadyGen and what it does. First things first, let's talk about the foundation, how ReadyGen came to be. When about 10 years ago, and some of us who've been teaching back then, we remember across the country, there was this new wave of these ELA shifts. They were talking about new behaviors like close reading. You know, everyone started taking books and holding them closer to the face. Well, no, that's not it. And then we started hearing about writing to sources. And we started hearing about complex text and, you know, academic vocabulary. And essentially, we were ushered in to a whole new area of instruction around elementary literacy. So we at Pearson took that intel, that insight to, you know, lay the groundwork of what we wanted to do with ReadyGen so that when districts like yours looked at it, they had the assurances that it was really anchored in the most contemporary English language arts research. So when you look at ReadyGen, right out the gate, you've probably seen the picture books, you've seen the chapter books, you've seen this thing called a text collection, you've seen leveled readers. That's your first assurance that we met bullet 1, the balance of informational and literary text. Nonfiction fiction has morphed into this informational and literary realm, and you have that with ReadyGen. Text complexity. No longer teaching to the child's reading level. So if they were below level and doing teaching explicitly to that, or the kid who's well above grade level teaching to that, really level setting, grade level, complex text. Students must be proficient with that. And so what does that mean? With the text you have, you'll see that with ReadyGen, that the picture books, the chapter books, the text collection really are anchored in teaching kids how to read that grade level complex text. Writing, not as a product, but as a resource that compels later thinking. Within ReadyGen, you'll see a reading, writing reciprocity. That writing begets new information about what we do in reading. And then also looking further, as Michelle said with the, she showed the content maps in ReadyGen. ReadyGen, each unit has a science or a social studies lean. That's important, isn't it, friends? Because, you know, like me as a former third grade teacher, science and social studies were always the last 40, 30 minutes of my day. And then as we know with teaching, it starts out at 40, by 10 it gets to 30, you know, by lunchtime it gets to 20, you know, by your success prep it gets down to 15, and by that last restroom break it's about a good 10 minutes, and then, you know, right there when it's time for science and social studies, boys and girls, inhale, exhale, write about it on a sticky note. That's science, right? Okay, really walking out of there. Within ReadyGen, the students are going to have opportunities to really dive into those true areas around social studies and science. Text-based answers. How many of you had that student, and I lovingly call him Tanner, that when you say, well, how do you know that Pip is the main character in the story? I just know. Or the book said so. Or they do the infamous, you know, gesture move. I'm like, oh, your shoulders work. Let's look with the mouth. Let's see if we can get some answers out of there. Today, students are really working on what's called citing text evidence, right? Really getting them to be able to justify how they know. And last but not least, as we mentioned earlier, vocabulary introduced on Monday, work with it on Tuesday, a crossword on Wednesday, write it in sentences on Thursday, test on Friday, forget about it on Saturday, right? We move into really teaching kids how to network with words. And that's what you will see with the vocabulary portion of ReadyGen, is how we move into the academic and the domain-specific vocabulary. ReadyGen wasn't made by, you know, 4 little old ladies in the garage, you know, who just decided to grab text and put stuff together. Leading the charge within ReadyGen, 4 authors, researchers, one with the great Michigan tie, Dr. P. David Pearson, the grandfather of the gradual release, really taking those ELA shifts and teaching us how to unpack that in day-to-day instruction. Dr. Freddie Hebert sat on the initial Common Core board, talking about the right text for each grade level and how vocabulary should work. Pam Allen really working on this reading and writing thing in practice. We know writing, it's a little tricky to teach, and we know it's an important subject to teach, so she really helped us craft our writing story. And we can't forget the importance of small group and support for English language learners, and that's where Dr. Sharon Bond came into the mix. What you need to know about ReadyGen right out the gate, and some of you already heard the answer, is that ReadyGen believes that students should have essentially a classroom library, their own personal library that they're reading throughout the school year. So starting in grade K, where's home little Pip, all the way moving up into 5th grade, you know, Night of the Spade Foot Toes, we're giving children, and think about your class, over the course of one school year, they're reading 12 full picture and chapter books. Engaging text, visually stimulating, allowing for them to have those natural discussions that we as teachers want and love, and guess what happens? We get to insert our cause and effect instruction, our main idea and details instruction. So the students start off with that library of trade books, picture and chapter books, that are the landscape or the foundation of their reading instruction. So when we're looking at ReadyGen, you're going to notice that one of the greatest appeals, at least for me as a teacher, is that it truly is anchored in building a love of literacy through picture and chapter books. As we go through each lesson in ReadyGen, the reading, writing, reciprocity, connection really allows for students to start to make those big leaps and connections to what's on the page. And we know in the classroom from read alouds, from what we do already with our students, is that as students look at the page, as they read sentences, they're already naturally making connections. They're thinking about something. How many of you had that one student? I'll call him Tanner again. That whenever you read something, he always connects it back to something at his Nana's house, right? Or his grandma's house. My grandma has that. Your grandma has an octopus in her house? And so he's like, okay, Tanner, all right, you made your connection, right? He's building his understanding. But that's what we really want students to do, is that through the written experience, through reading the great text, is that they're being able to build and understand their language, understand the written word. So my friends, in our short time together, I have 3 aims. It's really to talk about how ReadyGen is designed for college and career readiness. That really is the focus for our students. Next portion, really looking at the student-centered instructional design. How do we engage our students in their literacy experience? We'll talk about that. And we can't forget access for all. How does ReadyGen differentiate for the range of learners that cross into our doors, into our thresholds? So let's talk first things first, and so we can really get into the magic. Hopefully on your rubric, if there are points for dress attire, you've already checked my 5 out of 5. All right, so I want to make sure that I get everything. You know, no hairstyles, yeah, so all right, so I just carried over Valentine's Day, right? You know, just kept it going. Wore it on Valentine's night, so hey, bring it to school, right? I know Peter just shook his head all the way back there, like, oh my gosh. So within ReadyGen, K1 and 2, 6 units of instruction. Grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 units of instruction. You'll notice that 6 and 4 are both even numbers, right? Remember with ReadyGen, the infusion of science and social studies. So half of your units will be science-driven and the other half will be social studies connected. So you have that, again, that natural connection starting out. But as the students are reading and working through, I'm not going to go through those questions, I'll do those at the end. Each unit, you're going to see that these units are kind of like, I want to say, sandwich, take a great analogy. What's something that splits perfectly in half? Pizza, not in my house, no, because I eat it all. So let's just take each teacher edition. Each teacher edition in ReadyGen has 2 parts. We call it Module A and Module B. Remember, one of the shifts in ELA is about the balance of literary and informational text. So if each unit has a science or a social studies lane, half of this unit is going to focus on texts that are more informational in nature, and the other half, Module B, is going to focus on the other side, the literary angle. So you get from each unit that rich text diet of students having experiences with informational nonfiction text as well as literary text as well. If you do me a favor, you take your teacher's edition, and some of you may be looking at them, you know, liking what you're seeing. Some of you may, you know, on the side making your Target grocery list, what you're going to get from there, and maybe some of you are grading papers. I'm not going to look. If you take your teacher's edition, none of you are. That's so sweet. Thank you. Okay, turn to page 1, because I used to do that in these meetings. All right, so let's turn to page 1. Page 1, and you'll see something similar to what's on the screen. These are your resources. Feel free to dog ear, make notes, circle. Right, Jamil is awesome somewhere in the corner. Just definitely make this resource truly yours. As you look at, bless you.
Bless you.
As you look at page 1, and as I mentioned earlier in ReadyGen, that we have 2 modules, Module A, Module B. This one right here is your zoom in into Module A, right? And then on the left, you see what's called the text set. In that text set, you're going to see somewhere up in the corner a picture book or a chapter book, right? But then also you're going to see something that's called a text collection. We'll talk about those resources a little bit further in detail. As you drop to the bottom half on that, looking on that page, you're going to see something called Sleuth. No, Sleuth is not one of the students in your class. It actually is a resource that's used to teach close reading. And to the right, you see one of the hallmarks of small group instruction, that is the level text, ensuring that the students have opportunities to read on their levels. So here you see the kind of like the heartbeat of each module, the text, what are they reading? On the right side, while we want our students to walk out with proficiency in short A, we want them to be able to do cause and effect and main idea and details, there's really a larger aim past the text experience. And those are what we call in ReadyGen the essential understandings. So that's what you see there on the right, where we have what the students are expected to walk away with. You have the knows and the do's, but then you see something that goes totally against HGTV color chromatics, something in blue at the bottom, right? Do me a favor, place a star, a happy face, circle that, because this is where we really get to see why ReadyGen does what it does. And that's what's called the performance-based assessment. You will also remember within our conversation about the ELA shifts that one of the things that our standards look for is that balance of writing, right? Each module in ReadyGen is working toward a mode of writing. So you'll see here that the students are working on opinion writing, right? So throughout this whole module, all of their writing instruction is preparing them on how to write ultimately an opinion piece. Some modules you have your informational, some you will have your narrative, but you will always have at the end of each module that writing piece. Getting them there is the aim of this entire spread. Giving them the right text, the right knows and do's to be able to complete this performance-based assessment so that they are able to be successful with it. Now let's dig a little bit deeper into the text set. And as I mentioned earlier, each grade level, each student, first grade on through, has their set of 12 books. They're not reading them all at once, but they're reading them over the course of the school year. So as they're reading the books, the idea is that we want to engage students in building stamina. We know that not just for state assessment's sake, but we know that for students to really be able to become stronger readers, that they need to learn how to get through text, how to engage with text. And so what we did for them is that we gave them these picture books and chapter books. And as you've been looking at these books and as you look at the different pages in the books, you'll appreciate that within the trade books, the idea is that the students are not just reading randomly, grabbed books. The books are aimed to drive what's happening within each unit. But further within each unit, it's the relevancy of the text. Culturally relevant text and even socially relevant text. So as the students are reading in kindergarten through first grade, they're seeing a range of faces, experiences, storylines that really allow for them not only to understand themselves better, but to understand our nation, our country, and even on a greater scale, the world we live in. So as you're looking through the trade book brochure, and you've probably seen that somewhere, the trade book brochure in your bag or your box really gives you that under the hood experience of why this text? What's the synopsis of this text, so that when your students are reading them and working with them, you really know the ultimate outcomes we have with each picture and chapter book. So that's one portion of the text set, right? So I have my picture book, I have my chapter book, I've read that. But we also know in elementary literature, it's important for students to read poetry, right? We know reader's theater is nice. We love some Frog and Toad in primary grades, right? So for our students to get those other genres to increase their range of reading and to not give you too many books in your classroom, we've created what's called the text collection. So you're going to see a story like I Want an Iguana, good old Alex, right? You're going to see those infused in here. You're going to see some great Cynthia Ryland selections. But the idea is that as the students are reading their picture book, chapter book, and then they move into the text collection, guess what naturally happens? You start to infuse comparative analysis. You start to discuss what are these texts having similar? What are the, how did the author write this opening? It really allows for students to have a deeper engagement with text. When we looked at developing ReadyGen and what we learned from reading programs of yours, that just having one flat text a week or over a series of days really didn't allow the students to grow into their literacy learning. But in giving them robust literature and robust reading really allowed for them to grow deeper into their thinking. So within, moving to the text set, having that experience is wonderful, it's fine. Picture books are great. But today's child is more concerned about digital technology, right? Digital divos and divas, they were in the wombs doing the 140 characters already, right? Okay, those are the students in our class that, when something breaks in technology and we're sitting there getting ready to call somebody or, get someone to come to our room, they're already running over there trying to figure it out. And lo and behold, before that person comes over, guess what they probably have done? They fixed it, right? Because they get, oh, you're not hooked into the Wi-Fi, you're not hooked to the signal. And they put it together, thank you, Tanner, put another marble in the jar, right? I know he is. Tanner's just a great kid, right? Universal. So within ReadyGen, what you will love is that every selection that you see in ReadyGen also is available digitally. So on your different devices, whether it's iPad, Chromebooks, their cell phones, you have capabilities to access the ReadyGen content. So as the students are working within ReadyGen, the students are able. Mouse pad got very sensitive. Oh, stop it. They have access to be able to track the text. So everything that they've been reading, if they want to teach them how to annotate, there it goes. You can see it. There it goes. Good night. That never happens, right? You never have technology failures, right? So I can highlight, annotate, make notes into my e-text so as the students are reading, or if you want to assign out, you can have the students do that. There's also then an audio feature, so you have each selection read aloud, right? So those students who can't read grade level or just want that engaging voice, they have it. But we took it a step further because with text, sometimes there's background building, right? Because sometimes, while we're in the Midwest, and we can talk all day long about some snow and ice and sleet and rain and freezing rain and lake effect, right? All day long. We're veterans. But we probably can't say too much about an earthquake, right? Because we don't have that experience. So what you'll love with each picture book and chapter book in ReadyGen is that we built what's called interactive anchors. And in those interactive anchors allow for the students to have what's called a mini tour guide that gives them activities inside the picture books and the chapter books so that they are actually staying engaged with the selection. So here's one from the book Earthquake.
1935, the scientist Charles Richter developed a way to measure earthquakes. Scientists used his scale, the Richter scale, to assign a number to an earthquake's magnitude, or the amount of energy that it would.
All of this is available on our Pearson Realize platform, HTML5, no app needed, no plugins needed. Whatever learning management system you're using, it connects and allows for the rostering of your students. But also, you may have heard of this, this random internet resource called Google. Anyone heard of that? Right. Well, Google has become so dominant. I think, the Earth is working on paperwork to do a name change. Just call it Google and just get rid of Earth, the name of Earth, right? It's become so popular that at Pearson, we've created a partnership. So if you use Google Drive or Google Classroom, you don't have just a Google integration. You have a Google synchronization. So your students log into their Google Classroom. There they see their Stellar Luna assignment or their earthquake assignment. They click it, they finish it. The grade populates in Realize, but then also goes over to Google Classroom, right? So, and you don't have to have 1, 2, 3 different sign-ons. Whatever sign-on you set them up with carries over for both. So it really allows for us to move from that print base. If we are print, fine, wonderful. ReadyGen is comprehensive in print. But if you're moving to that digital world of using Google Drive, Google Classroom, the Pearson Realize partnership is an exclusive partnership with Google. We have our papers to prove it that allows for the students and the teachers to have that synchronization of their assignments. So all the great content that they see and Realize can be done and carried over into Google. All right, so we've talked about the text set. We've kind of, the picture books, the chapter books, and the text collection that make up the day-to-day instruction. But now let's look a little bit further at the actual instruction itself. My friends, back in our Teacher's Edition, will you join me on page 6? And you're going to see a similar spread to what's on the screen. So what you see here on pages 6 and 7, on the far left, in this yellow, whatever HDTV color it is, macaroni cheese yellow, whatever it is, I'm sure it's great, wonderful, we'll go with that, right? You see the text set, right? The picture book, the chapter book, or the text collection that you'll be using. But then as you move from left to right, you see each skill that you have connected to that particular text, giving you the assurance that while I'm reading Stellar Luna, while I'm reading, I Want an Iguana, Alexander Used to Be Rich, I'm seeing what I'm doing with cause and effect, my phonics skill, my graphic, my grammar, my grammar conventions, really showing that explicit instruction that will cover throughout each day within ReadyGen. So it gives you that first piece. Then we take it a step further and we then morph it into the instructional setup that is the engagement of how we work with our students in the actual instruction. And my friends, turn with me one page, and you'll see pages 8 and 9. Okay, and that actually takes us into how each module is unpacked over a series of days. In ReadyGen, we have a 3-part daily model of instruction. We call it suggested. And I'll just stop there because I'm sure Tuesday night, like me, in commercial breaks up between This Is Us and a million little things, whatever, right? Okay, right. My commercial breaks, I do my lesson planning, right? And then This Is Us comes back on, and Jack says something, and they flash back to the crock pot, and I start crying. If you haven't heard about the crock pot, I'm sorry, just too late, right? You start crying all over again.
Come on.
Oh, yes. And it was season. I know, some people still don't know about the crock pot. They're like, hold up, wait, I got to binge watch it in summer. I'm like,
That part of that was nice.
I know, right? Sorry. Oh, I started something over here. Oh, my God. Ross may separate these two over here. Okay, so with the lesson planning portion, we know that the night before or that morning of, we have our 45-minute, 90-minute, 60-minute lesson plan made, right? And then that fire drill happens. And then because the fire alarm sensor is broken, another fire drill happens, right? As soon as you get back into the classroom, and then, Tanner got sick, and he needed 3 people to carry him, take him down to the nurse's office. So my 90-minute lesson plan just kind of blew up, right? Within ReadyGen's design is that you have that fluidity, that it really allows for you to see how to make adjustments with your text, adjustments with your writing, so that you don't feel like you're losing instruction. But more importantly, as a teacher, you have that creativity to really be able to do great instruction. And the instruction, my friends, is bucketed into 3 categories: whole group, small group, and writing and whole group, okay? Let's start with actual whole group, and that's where you see pages 8 and 9. That's where you see the suggested pacing. What we typically do with teachers in implementation, or in this instance, piloting, is that we do a discussion first. We say, tell us about your lit block. What are your non-negotiables? What are your expectations? Some schools may have certain initiatives, and the other schools have other initiatives, and we really work to take this spread and customize it to what your districts want, so that you don't have a resource that really is speaking to someone that's not your students. Truly, ReadyGen becomes your gen. Okay? It becomes your resource to really unpack it into your classroom. So what we have with the whole group here, you'll see that we take each lesson and we unpack what the students are doing with the picture book or the chapter book, the text collection, vocabulary, the skill, really allowing for them to see it. If you join me a few pages later, starting on page 12, we're now going to dig into the hood of a lesson, okay? Can you all see okay? I just realized it was a little dark.
Oh, yeah,
Are you
no,
all
we're fine.
Like, that's awfully. My grandfather was like, turn the light on. I'm like, I have a flashlight. Turn more light on. I'm like, yeah, I'm blinded. See everything. All right, so looking at the first portion of each day. So within ReadyGen, we have a key instructional design that starts with, on page 12, build understanding. This is where we engage the students. We build schema, allowing for them to make that initial connection. So the whole first page is allowing for the students to build that background. This is where Tanner is going to talk about what his Nana asked, where he did the weekend, right? But you also have on page 12 this opportunity to engage students in turn and talks. Think, pair, share, right? Hands up, stand up, pair up, right? The whole behaviors of this thing called Daily 5. All of those behaviors morphed to increase what? Student engagement. Not just the kids just passively reading text, but getting them to discuss the text. So every first portion of a ReadyGen lesson is how we engage the students in reading the text. Then we move onto page 13, and this is where I geek out a bit, because this is where the students get to do that close reading. And we know with close reading, that's where we revisit certain pages, paragraphs, for explicit instruction, for key purposes. But our close reading just isn't that. This is where the students learn how to cite text evidence. This is where we go back to certain paragraphs and we have them answer certain questions, but those questions just aren't recall, retell, right? Recall, retell, those are safe questions sometimes, but we notice that's not what builds strong readers and writers. So what you're going to see under each cite text evidence or close reading prompt is this DOK demarcation, depth of knowledge level, so that you know that these questions are your level 1s, your level 2s, your level 3s, your level 4 is actually the performance-based assessment, because that's when you're bringing in all the text together. So you have that first spread, whole class learning in ReadyGen. All right? Flip one page for me, friends. On page 14, this is where you see the last portion of whole group. These are vocabulary and your skill-specific instruction. Let's talk vocabulary. So within each text that they read, you will have your dedicated vocabulary. So you have the words the students need to know and to understand, so you're going to have that experience. But remember what we know about vocabulary, rote memorization of vocabulary terms doesn't give you your payoff, right? Dr. Hebert, who's one of our authors, she actually did some research on this behavior called generative vocabulary, where the students take those key words that they've been working with. So I've studied migrate, I know its definition. Dr. Hebert said, take it a step further. Do some type of maybe morphological lesson around it. Take that base word, explain what it means, and then ultimately the students work on synonyms and antonyms. Because we know, let's face it, even the most well-behaved child who's in schools day one from grade K, never miss a day all the way through grade 12, we will never teach them all the vocabulary they need to be successful readers and writers. However, through generative vocabulary, we can equip them with the behaviors of how to dissect or generate words. And that's what you're getting with the vocabulary story that you see on page 14, is that we infuse an opportunity for students to network with words. And because ReadyGen continues to have that digital piece, your generative vocabulary has a fun game called Monster Word Mania, where they actually get to take words and try to find the right ones to get to hop on the bus. The last portion of skill instruction on page 14 is reading analysis. Sometimes it will be called language analysis, but the aim of reading analysis, language analysis, is your explicit skill teaching. I've done my reading of the text, I've answered some comprehension questions. This is where I say main idea and details, boys and girls, straight up, no chaser, right? Cause and effect, drawing conclusions. This is where I explicitly teach it, and I use the text that we read earlier as the basis, right? So we have that reading analysis or language analysis. And within reading analysis, language analysis, you also too then have skills videos.
Every story tells about something. The main idea or theme.
All right, wonderful, right, dandy. Okay. The key piece to not forget about the whole class or the whole group portion of ReadyGen is the foundational skills lesson. K1 and 2, even in third grade. That's the one thing probably, if you think about reading instruction over the years, that probably hasn't changed, is the importance of a strong foundational skills scope and sequence, right? I mean, that has never wavered. If we equip our students with abilities to decode words well, they will be successful in accomplishing how to read and interact with text. So on the first page of every lesson, and some of you, my friends, you saw that when you were on page 12, there is this lavender, purple, Skittles color, right color, HCT? Okay, all right. So this purplish colored call out to say today's mini lesson for foundational skills. The reason we introduce it this way is that if your K1 or 2 teachers have morning meeting, or they have a reading rug that that classroom conversation before the day starts, this is a great way to do a formative assessment to see who knows short A, who knows consonant digraphs, who knows the Blend brothers. You're able to kind of pick up already who's made the connection. But we know that's just not enough. That's the warm-up piece. And as you move into these next pages, if you're K1 or 2, you started to see these pages right after page 14. You saw these foundational skills pages. This is where you have the opportunity to explicitly teach. So our kindergarten, first, and second grade teachers are going to have these in each lesson, dedicated instruction around foundational skills. And within foundational skills, yep, you guessed it, you will have foundational skills, digital activities to engage your students with being able to decode sounds and words, but also you have your own kit, your own foundational skills resource kit filled with great resources like song rhyme charts, so you can sing beautifully because all K1 and 2 teachers are first place finishers on The Voice, right, in American Idol. And third grade folks like me give you renditions of Say the Best for Last, where I was on every note but the right one, right? Okay, so you have those charts, you have your decodable readers, so we know those are important. Have your high frequency word cards, but then also you have embedded within there is a resource that's called your Foundational Skills Workbook. This gives you more support for your day-to-day instruction, and your students also have their own student-facing one that they can use as well. Grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, we haven't forgotten you. You move into what's called word analysis. So you have that ability to really do word etymology to support your instruction. And I have a colleague who says a joke, and I've never been able to deliver it well, so I'm going to try to deliver it with you all, right? And I have 2 witnesses that will be able to tell him it landed right, okay? So within the foundational skills, we give you all these resources, and we give you the letter tiles that never get lost. Yeah, didn't laugh, yes. Well, okay, all right, I'll scrap that one. I'll get rid of it. I'll just totally go on. And we have spelling lists. Okay, so I'll move on to my next one. Maybe my voice inflection. Maybe I'll come back and try it again. We'll come back next week and try it over. All right, so my friends, that's whole group. Now let's dig a little bit deeper and look into what we're doing within small group instruction. So we're on page 15 in our teacher's editions. And on page 15, Pam Allen, she and Dr. Ernest Morrell, who's somewhat across the street at the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, they worked on a book that is called Every Child a Super Reader. And the aim was that for our kids to really become stronger readers, we have to give them time to do what? Read. We can't throw every second of instruction on there and the kids never get a chance to hop in that browsing basket or go into their cubby and find great text. So what we've done within ReadyGen is that we give teachers an explicit independent reading routine, so we teach kids how to do that independent reading. When we flip to pages 16 and 17, we move from independent reading in small group to our small group keyword being options, okay? That next spread. Options we provide, you decide. Are we doing everything on this spread of 16, 17? No. But key things to note, you will have your remediation lessons. You will also have your extension lessons for your kids who are high ability or gifted and talented. You're going to also see more foundational skills or phonics, small group support. And then you're also going to see additional activities called out in what's called your Readers and Writers Journal. In the Readers and Writers Journal, this is where the students have opportunities to take what they've been reading, working on, and complete passages and tasks to help demonstrate their understanding. Additionally, after we complete small group, my friends, the last portion of a ReadyGen lesson is anchored in writing. So you join me on page 18. You will see the writing story that is ReadyGen. Now remember, ReadyGen, I'm just doing some quick math. Grades K1 and 2, 6 units. Starting at grade 3, I go to 4. Each unit sliced in half, Module A, Module B.